sights to see, rolling hills or city streets, ocean to ocean and all in between. It's out there just waiting on you and me. So look alive, 'cause while I was waiting for you, paradise is on the other side.
Welcome to Unreasonable, put on by the Jacksonville Civic Council. Interesting interviews from Jacksonville's most iconic entrepreneurs, CEOs, and wonderful success stories. They do things that are unexpected, unreasonably, in order to make their own change. In each episode, you'll meet passionate change makers who are rewriting the rules and daring to dream bigger for their community and our city. My hope that their stories ignite something in you, that you'll be inspired to reimagine what's possible and lead with purpose in your work, your life, and right here in Jacksonville. You're going to really be inspired. Welcome to another episode of Unreasonable. I'm Josh Martino, a member of the Civic Council and your host. Our guest today is Eric Mann, President and CEO of the First Coast YMCA. Eric has dedicated the majority of his career to community health, youth development, and civic engagement. He brings a blend of compassion, strategy, and vision to not only his role at the Y, but to Jacksonville as well. Today, we'll explore his personal journey, leadership philosophy, the civic impact of his work, and times he had to be unreasonable in order to achieve his goals. Eric, welcome to Unreasonable.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here.
Thank you. I'm somewhat nervous, but I think I'll get through it.
I have that effect on people, I've been told. We'll start at the beginning. So you grew up during the 1960s in Summerville, Georgia. I'm a Georgia boy as well, a town of less than 5,000 people that sits in the Appalachian foothills northwest of Atlanta. You had an extraordinary mother and a very hardworking father. Tell me about the influence your parents had on your life and what childhood was like back then.
Well, it was Georgia. I was born in 59, so it was the 60s. And growing up in a small town, I didn't know it was a small town because I'd never obviously been anywhere else. So it was the county seat, and so I was grew up in a household of hard workers. My dad was a plumbing contractor and went out every day as a plumber. And he had a high school degree, but he was a laborer, and he was really good with his hands and machines and things of that nature. My mom was a school teacher, and my mom was the head of the household per se. She was disciplinarian. She was, from a value standpoint, I learned about servant leadership, but you're just watching it every day because it's your mother. But then you grow up and you figure out, wow, and I learned that in terms of how to treat people, integrity, servant leadership. My mom was that lady, and I'm pretty sure every community has it, but in our small community, being African-American, she was a teacher, and so my mom was doing everybody's taxes, and she was doing refund check loans before it was popular, because she would do their taxes and then they'd come and borrow money till their check came back.
Right.
And she was always doing that. She was always helping people, and any politician who's running for mayor or city council or sheriff, they pretty much had to come through my mom in terms of endorsement for the black community. And so I watched that, but didn't realize what was going on. And so she was civically engaged, but the values of how to treat people and the value of education. My sister and I, at an early age, knew we were going to go to college. We didn't know what for, but we knew that education was very important, and that would get us to that next level that she saw for her kids. And I think most parents want their kids to do better than they have. And so my mother and my father both supported education and were fierce, not only for us, but for the community around us. So then, you had, the village really did raise you. And so I can tell a story. when segregation ended, I moved from my community school, which was all black, 2 classrooms, to a all white school district in which my mother taught in, and it was tough. It was tough because I think it was like 5 blacks in the whole school district.
Wow.
And as a 3rd grader, it was very tough. The school teachers knew my mother, right?
Yeah.
So I was not a happy kid, and so I fought a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the South was still segregated in those
Yes.
days, and playing Little League baseball or swimming in a public pool was restricted. When did you realize, I think you said 3rd grade, that you realized that the world around you was different for the black community?
Well, education, especially when we went to this other school district, I was mad because I didn't have any friends there, and it was tough that first year. I fought quite a bit. That was one side of it, because the teachers would call my mother, and so I would get a paddling at school. They would tell her, I'd get another one. Then my dad came home from work at night. I got another one. So I was averaging about 3 a day for a little while. But it taught me, one, about education. So I think the foundation of my education really happened during that process. And I had a 3rd grade teacher, Miss Smith, who kind of took me under her wing and kept me as much as she could out of trouble, but from an education standpoint.
You had a high school coach that took you under his wing and mentored you. And tell us about that experience, how important that was for you, and why that's led you to have a passion for mentoring others.
Mm-hmm. Well, the elementary experience, I started playing sports, and then I was pretty good. I started seeing how people reacted to me as a athlete, and they reacted differently. And so I was competing against my hometown my friends. So I'm 1 or 2 blacks on the football team or the basketball team playing against my friends that are my neighbors in a different school district. So I get to time to go to high school. My local high school recruited me from this other district. So now I go to the high school where I lived, and the coach Wendell is his name, Buddy Wendell. I was a quarterback. I had a really good arm. I could run, I could throw, and so they recruited me back, and I was a free safety and a quarterback. But he taught me about hard work. I mean, he was like, you can be as good as you want to, but you're gonna have to work at it. You got to work hard at it. And so he taught me about hard work. He taught me about continuing the education side. He said, you have a chance to go to college in a small Division III type deal, but you have to have the grades, but you also have to have the discipline to stay out of trouble. I mean, that's really part of what he did. He talked about education, hard work, but also how to avoid those pitfalls that a lot of kids back then fell into, whether it's having children at an early age as a teenager, or the drug side of it, all the things that get a lot of young men and young women, but young men during that time, they get stuck and make bad decisions.
You know, with mentors, it takes trust, and a lot of earned trust. So what was it about this coach, this special person in your life? Was it the timing? Was it their role in your life? Was it, I'm good at this, and this person's really helping me get further? What was the trust that was built to allow you to take in that mentorship?
It was consistency, and it was discipline. It was discipline. He was very tough, and we practiced hard. I mean, our school practiced very hard, and but it was Georgia, and so I think in his eyes, being the first black quarterback in this community was a big deal, and he was the coach. Yeah. And so his discipline, he understood what discipline would do in terms of not only on the football field, but also outside of football. And so he wasn't afraid to challenge. He wasn't afraid to call me and the other players out. But for myself, that discipline of working hard and really understanding the whole circle of what you need to do to be a productive person as well as a good athlete. And I ended up going to Mars Hill University because of him. He was a graduate of that school. And so that's how I ended up there. And great guy. He still lives there.
Oh, wow.
He's older, but when I was, Mars Hill named me Alumni of the Year back in 22, his letter, he did a letter that's talking about that experience that I had back when I was in high school.
So all those years later, you read that letter. How much does that impact you? What kind of emotion does that stir up? Because, I know what it is to have an opportunity created for me by people I consider to be mentors, and the desire to prove them right and have an impact on, their ability to mentor others, and what it means to be successful in the opportunities I've been given. So all those years later, you read this letter. I mean, did it just hit you like a brick?
One of the things, Josh, is you don't realize a lot of these impacts because at that age, you're not thinking about impacts. But now I look back, whether it's discipline, my mom and dad, and Coach Wendell's mentorship, I look back at it and it's like, wow, they were being intentional when I thought it was just everyday kind of thing.
Yeah.
It really wasn't. I think that's the part that I look back and I'm most proud of, that I had people around me. There's a lot of people around me growing up, including my parents, who are your baseline role models, but other people in the community, and Coach was one of them that fed into me. And as I grew older, I started to understand and see, okay, that's why.
That's why.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why. But at the time, you're kind of like,
That's just Coach.
That's just Coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just Coach.
I get it. Well, hey, so recently you announced that after 45 years of YMCA leadership across 7 cities and 14 years as CEO of the First Coast Y, you're retiring. But before we get to that, let's go back to the beginning. When did you know the YMCA was going to be your life's work? And how did a mileage reimbursement perk lure you to the Y to begin with?
Well, it took a while for me to get to the point of the Y would be a career. So I attended Mars Hill, which was Mars Hill College then, now it's Mars Hill University. But I started as an accounting major, and I did accounting for the first year, and I'm like, man, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And I grew up wanting to be a coach, so I figured I would be a teacher, coach football or baseball or basketball, and go back home somewhere around there and work. That was kind of that's what I knew. And then I switched my majors to recreation and then a minor in psychology. Part of that is I had to do an internship for a semester. I sent out my resume to 5 or 4 organizations: the YMCA, Parks and Rec, Boys and Girls Club, and the Jewish Community Center.
So a lot of synergies there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I sent a resume out because who doesn't want free labor for 4 months, right? And so they all said yes, but the Y gave me 50 cents a mile reimbursement. And you can imagine in college driving, if you know Asheville and Mars Hill, it's about 15 miles.
Yeah.
So about 30 miles. I'm like, cool, I could get some gas money, have some money to buy some pizza.
At least it was something.
Yeah,
right.
It was better. So that's how I ended up at the Y. I didn't grow up with the Y. I didn't know the Y at all where I grew up. And so there was no Y. The closest Y was in Rome. And I remember they didn't allow blacks in it. So I didn't have a history with the YMCA. And so I go into the internship at a non-facility, at a church. and it was in the Black community in Asheville. And after I enjoyed it, I started like a day camp program. I started after school. I did fitness classes. Part of my major, I had to get a WSI, so I knew swim, so I did swim lessons. And at the end of my internship, I was graduating. And this conversation is really funny. So it wasn't any cell phone. So I'm talking to my parents about coming to graduation. And they were like, what are you going to do after graduation? I was like, well, I think I'll come back home, umpire some baseball games and make some money, kind of take it easy, and then send out some resumes in August or September. And I heard my dad in the background say, what about that place you've been working for free? And my mother said, yeah, what about? I said, yeah, they offered me a job, but it's a $5 an hour youth worker. It wasn't a director job. So I'm thinking,
Right.
I've been to college 4 years. I'm going to get out and get a real job.
I need to be at a certain level.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they said, well, we think you ought to take that job. Basically, they said, don't come home. And so I took the job. It was the good thing about it offered benefits.
Yeah.
So, but I took the job in Asheville. For some reason, I've always been able to attract and people around me by not intentionally, but some people would call me a Pied Piper. So the programs were started, all
Right.
these things that would happen. And so I liked what I was doing. I was working with kids, working around sports, just, at 20 and 21 years old. So that's how I started. Really how my first director job came as a result of the New Haven Central Y in Connecticut.
Yep.
They tried to recruit my boss. And my boss told them, no, I'm not the person you want, because he was going to be a branch executive. He said, you really want someone I have working with me. So he recommended me as a youth director.
Wow.
And so that's how I ended up going to New Haven for the interview. And that's how I got my first director job. And one of the things in this journey as we go through the Y is all of them have one thing in common. I had never been to the communities before I moved there. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't have anything about. So you got to imagine 1981, leaving the South. I had never been anywhere north of D.C.
Yeah, New Haven's pretty different. College town, though.
Yeah, it is a college town. So I take off. Everything I owned was in my car. I go to New Haven. And it was a culture shock, to say the least. A culture shock. Again, another one of those seminal moments where, I grew up in the South. You're either white or black. There was no ethnic.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody Jewish. I'm pretty sure we have Jewish people in Somerville, but I didn't know them. And so you get up there and you're Irish, you're Puerto Rican, you're Catholic, you're Italian, you're Jewish. All this, and it just opened my eyes, but you have to learn how to navigate all this newness. Some of the people used to call me country time because I had a Southern accent. So
That's a good nickname.
but I progressed through the Y, got to the level of senior program director, and got a call to come look at a job in Los Angeles 4 years later.
Sounds like a reasonable path. Somerville, Asheville, New Haven, Connecticut, L.A., and then I know Pittsburgh and Jacksonville, Cincinnati. Yeah, several cities that, I think what's resonating with me about this story is, what the Y represents. There are pieces of your mother's influence in there, being an educator and how she was perceived and affecting youth. Your coach, mentoring people, affecting youth, and changing people's stars. Whether that's your goal with every intentional thing that you do, but it is that's the result. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it started to feel pretty good for you, and you were recognizing that it was in you this whole time. Like you said, I didn't realize it at the time when you were a kid, but these values that were instilled in you were now starting to manifest as a career that you were really good at and that you were being sought after by Ys across the country.
Yeah, and it's really about relationships, Josh. I would say that, and values of treating people genuinely the way you want to be treated, communicating that to them regardless of where they are, who they are. I've never been afraid of communicating to someone who supposedly at a higher level. And so all through these journeys, I learned how to play golf in New Haven. Never played it in my life. And someone said, Eric, if you want to grow in any business, golf is a game that will afford you not to be left out with the important people.
Yeah.
That's literally what they said. And my first golf swing, I played at Yale Golf Club, and I borrowed some clubs and went out there at a golf outing. And so the relationships with that, and also starting to understand how you can grow in a career that's really around people and having a comfort and success around building strong relationships. That's where it started, but I still didn't understand it. God had a plan for me, but I didn't realize it.
So speaking of impact, a specific incident in 2023, anti-Semitic messages were projected onto downtown Jacksonville buildings. And you teamed up with Adam Chaskin of the Jewish Community Alliance to begin an initiative called Together Against Hate, promoting unity in our community. What was the impetus to make this effort, and how important was it to use your platform at the Y to amplify the support?
It's interesting. It's the Y has as three pillars: youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. And part of that is, in each one of those pillars, we do a lot of things inside there that really helps us guide in how we go about our work. So social responsibility is one that there's no prescription of what's inside that pillar. So Ys are able to create what they believe is their social responsibility. For us, our social responsibility is to get outside our normal offerings and be part of the overall community. And therefore, issues that affect the overall community, we want to be a part of the solutions for that. So it really started with that as a baseline, but it really started with Adam and I, our relationship. So Adam moves from Albany, New York, and he had a relationship with the YMCA in Albany. I know the CEO, and he had told him, when you go to Jacksonville, call up Eric Mann. So Adam calls me, we meet, and we develop a relationship of peers. And so a lot of things in common, but so that's how it started. So Adam and I knew each other a couple of years. We had done some things together, our organization. So there was a baseline of trust. So there was a visual down here at the park, downtown, from right across from City Hall, a candlelight deal based on those issues that were happening. And so I'm there. I see Adam across the way. We just come up and, how you done that? We say this is some crazy stuff, and Jacksonville going the wrong direction with this and this particular issue. And we just said, man, we should get together and talk about how our organizations can come together to help fight hate.
That's really cool.
And so that's really how it started. And meeting right here in this room, his staff team, him and myself with 2 or 3 of we sat down and started talking about a 5K, Race Against Hate, in February. And what then turned out, the staff took it and said, okay, we should create a series out of this. And so Adam and I were just I would say that because of our roles, we really empowered the team to create more than just the 5K run or race, but let's take this opportunity to create something that has legs, that educates the community about. And so that's really how it started.
Yeah.
It was just the vision of helping.
This podcast is titled Unreasonable because of the George Bernard Shaw quote that Gary loves so much. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world, and the unreasonable one persists to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. How does that apply to you, and what's the most unreasonable thing people say that you've done in your life, besides this podcast?
I was asked to come to Jacksonville to work with the Y. One of the key things that the search committee and the board wanted to do was to replace the old Riverside Y. And so I get here, start learning the community, listening, talking, and we create this. We got this property on the river, so we create this this new Y that happens to be 72,000 square feet on the river, and then 2013 it was going to cost $20 million. And I'll tell the story with one of Jacksonville's heroes was Jim Wilson. And so I went meet with Jim, and Jim was a huge advocate for activating the river, the Y. And then, he would always talk about the Y needs to be what sparks the growth of Riverside. And so I remember going to his office and showing him the plans, and he was like, "Man, this looks great." And da-da-da. And he says, "Well, how much?" I said, $20 million. And he looked at me, he says, the Y's never raised $20 million for an individual project. Eric, I'm not sure it's going to happen. And it was the vision and the kind of the promise of what it could do for the community kind of drove, and everybody I would talk to. And so you can imagine talking to the Jim Winstons and the John Bakers and the Rusty Newtons and the Peggy Bryant, everybody who was involved on our board, and getting them on board to take this significant challenge on. But then slowly, as we started making progress, I remember going to Jim, and Jim was like, he'd already made his gift, and we were getting close, and he was like, "Eric, I didn't believe it."
Yeah.
He says, "I would have never thought that we would be able to pull off raising the resources to do that." And so he gave some more dollars toward it at the end. But that was probably here in Jacksonville, one of them, along with having a great staff team and great board, that I believe changed the trajectory for our organization, but also showed that Riverside, now you look at Riverside 13 years later, it's beautiful. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the Y was at the forefront of the beginning of a lot of that transformation. And so
everything's impossible until it's done.
Until it's done. And so it really wasn't about me, but the vision. I will tell you a story about this is Jacksonville. When I was talking to community people about the potential of having a Y on the river. So I was talking to a lady, older black lady, who was a member at Riverside. And I asked her, what does that mean? Because we were able to stay open at Riverside while Winston was being built. So there was about 12, 13 months where, and so this lady, she was probably in her 70s. She says, "I'm excited about it because in Jacksonville, you've made it when you have a home on the river." And, I'm like, okay, this is an older black lady from the north side. And I'm like, okay. And she says, "Now I have my piece of the river." And it really hit me when she said that. I was like, okay, everybody sees this new Y differently.
Shared ownership.
And so that was, I was like, okay, now I get it even more so because, if you walk into Winston, that's what we want Jacksonville to be.
That shared ownership represents what it means to be a community.
And you have you have someone who might be a cook at a restaurant on a treadmill next to a multimillionaire.
That's exactly
and
right.
they are friends. And they look forward to seeing each other when they go to the Y. So,
Well, let's pivot to the Civic Council. You're the immediate past chair of the Jacksonville Civic Council, and during your tenure, you started making some big changes in how it operates. You sought greater transparency, created a long-term strategy, expanded and diversified the membership, and helped procure a dynamic professional staff. How and why was this the time for all of that to happen?
this story is another one that it wasn't intentional. I think that the individuals who helped recruit me to Jacksonville felt like that the Civic Council, the Y should be sitting at the table, that I should be sitting on the Civic Council, which at the time there were little or no nonprofit CEOs of a service delivery organization on the Civic Council. The hospitals were on the foundation, but not the Y wasn't thought about. I'm sure when that opportunity came and Civic Council said, do we want a Y CEO on the Civic Council? Because it was all business leaders from for-profit companies. And so that was interesting. But then I got involved, and I think I ended up on the membership committee. But it was also the Y. Having the Y around the table was a first, and then younger African-American guy. And so I got involved like I do. If I'm going to be in there, I'm going to get involved as the best way I can to help the organization. But when I was asked to be chair, it surprised me. It surprised me. And I had been involved in I understand organizational development. So the Civic Council, they were growing up. They started at baby steps with the non-group and then taking steps as an organization. And so I believe what people saw in me is that I deal with boards. I understand strategic planning and execution and bringing people together. And so I have to believe that was some of the reasons they sought me as the chair. And then I watched, because I was on the board during the time of the JEA stuff, and I watched what the dynamics politically and understood kind of what was going on in the role of the Civic Council and the potential of the impact the Civic Council could make on the community. But transparency had to be one of the things we dealt with, because I'd read the papers and they'd say this group of people that nobody knows is making
secret
these decisions.
handshake society,
right?
Yeah.
And so that was one. I believe the development of our strategic plan, it was critical at the time. And so we were fortunate to really get probably 100 people engaged in the process of developing our strategic plan. And when it's not about me, it was more about, okay, what does this organization want to be and how can it really change Jacksonville? I truly believe that the Civic Council is one of the organizations in the community that has not only the capacity, but the potential to help take Jacksonville to the next level. And because of where in Pittsburgh and Charlotte, some of these cities, I had watched how cities have grown and when they were here. And so I lived in those communities at that time. So I had that perspective as well. And so I just took what has been successful in my work with the Y. And now the difference is you're working with a bunch of CEOs who are good people and rallying that group around one cause.
And so, the Civic Council's got this vision to make Jacksonville a world-class city, like you said, by 2032. I believe we can get there, and we discuss often the things that will take to get there. What are your beliefs in how we get there, or where we need to go from this moment right here?
I think we can, one, continue to go about bringing everybody into the tent, and the execution of plans, right? But it's also, I believe the Civic Council doesn't have an agenda other than helping Jacksonville.
Yeah.
But also bringing people in like yourself. So part of that transition was from an older group, because we were at one time like 20 or 30 members. Now we're like 100. But the diversity is not only of kind of sectors, but it's also age, experience. It goes with the transition of Jacksonville. Leadership has, all of them have timings, right? And so people come through and they lead during their season. Well, I believe that we're bringing two seasons together. Folks who have been leaders, who are still leaders, but they've been there a long time, but we're cultivating and bringing in the young next generation of leaders at the same time. And now we have this nexus of young leaders coming through, working with those leaders who've been around for a while in the same direction. And that's what gives me hope for where we're going. The other piece that I'm probably most excited about and really I think it needs to happen, is for all of our community to benefit from the prosperity of growth that we see in our community, not just now, but for 2032. Jacksonville is I think can be an example of a community that has really acknowledged what some of its weaknesses are, but at the same time are ready to address those and bring everybody together. And so that's another piece to why I'm involved. I believe there's an opportunity to have all the voices and all part of our community to grow and prosper.
It's a great place to conclude. I just want to say thanks. Thanks for coming on. And if it's true that the quality of your life will be determined by the quality of your contribution, it's no wonder to see you living so well. And I know that Jacksonville's better because of your commitment to what you've done in this community for future generations. And I know I'm grateful, and I know so many others are grateful for what you've done for this city. So thank you, and thank you for coming on.
You're welcome. It's kind of awkward to talk about that because your intentions are not that. You just do the work. And so if I had any small part in helping Jacksonville grow as a community and the impact, that's because of the people that are around me.
No doubt that you have. So thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you again for joining us on this episode of Unreasonable. We'll see you the next time. Thanks for joining us on Unreasonable. Look for us online, follow us on social media, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Ocean to ocean.